maybe many people, because of the new cosmology, of the information we got from science, maybe they think cosmology kills spirituality because you find yourself in a bigger and bigger universe, and you are more and more meaningless. Why you get opposite conclusion?
I wonder if you know the work by Joel Primick and Nancy Abrams. They're a husband-wife couple. Joel Primick is an astrophysicist. They wrote the book New Vision of Reality, I think, or New Vision of the Cosmos. But they work at the University of Santa Cruz in California. They're wonderful people. And in that book and then a subsequent book, they talk about the new cosmology this way. They say, we now know that the human body, among all the bodies of the universe, the largest of the bodies and the smallest, we're right in the middle. We're right in the middle, if you add it all up, between the tiniest subatomic particle and the greatest galaxies. We're right in the middle. Secondly, we have come along at this amazing time in the history of the universe when we can still see the edge of the universe. Before too long, the edge will curve over and intelligent beings will no longer be able to pick up news from the edge of the universe. And then they say our bodies are just the right size. If our bodies were a lot larger, so much of our brain would be spent just running our bodies that we couldn't be looking at the universe. And so they call this the Goldilocks effect, the story of Goldilocks who broke into the house and this bed was too soft and this bed was too hard and this bed was just right. And this porridge was too cold, and this porridge was too hot, and this porridge is just right. So they make the point that our species come along at the right time, the right size, and to understand the whole universe. And this is very special. So we are a very special species. And again, Bertrand Russell and other scientific materialists, certainly Hawkins, for example, they want to say we're nothing but atoms thrown together and it's all an accident and everything. It doesn't add up. It's not an accident. We couldn't be here if in the first 700,000 years of the universe, the fireball, the expansion of the fireball had been 1 degree warmer or colder, or 1/millionth of a second slower or faster, we wouldn't be here. So it seems to me you just can't conclude, therefore, that the universe didn't want us. I think the universe did want us. And we're here to pray. For what reason? We're here to praise the universe. We have larynxes for praise. And obviously to praise you have to know. So we're here to study the universe and to praise it. And so I think that's where the real debate should be going on between scientific materialism and the idea of spirit present in the universe and in our making, in our awareness. And now Rupert Sheldrake has a new book that's absolutely brilliant.
Science Set Free.
Exact, Science Set Free. In America, in England, it's called The Science Delusion. I think. Yeah, based on Dawkins' book, The God Delusion. And the book's done extremely well in England. It's done badly in America. But the reason is that in England, by the way, not a single scientific magazine has reviewed it. They are so afraid of it. And as someone said to me, they have nothing to say because he names the dogmas, he calls them that, 10 dogmas of contemporary science that are inherited from the scientific materialist worldview that have no backing scientifically. They're just dogmas. They're beliefs. And in America, the reason it hasn't received attention is for the same reason, really. The scientific establishment is so strong that they refuse to even pay attention enough to tell the world it exists. Yeah. So it's really, I mean, Rupert is a real prophet within his own profession. Now there's another funny story about Brian Swim's film. Brian Swim made a film last year, that came out last year, on the history of the universe. It's a 1-hour film. And the PBS, which is the big public broadcasting station in America.
Culture.
Right. Their scientists turned it down immediately because Brian talks about wonder and things like that. This isn't science, this isn't science. But in San Francisco, where the area that Brian and I live in, the PBS station was so desperate for money, they got a lot of letters from people saying, you should show this film, show this film. So it wasn't the scientists who approved of PBS, it was the accountants who said, let's show the film, we'll make some money. Well, they showed the film, and it made lots of money. Okay, they showed it again. They showed it 13 times in 1 month, in August, a year ago.
Wow.
And then the national headquarters said, you know, they saw the numbers, and the scientist said, this isn't science, is it? He's talking about wonder. And, but the accountants said, look at the numbers, look at them. So, to put a big long story short, it is shown on 350 PBS stations all around America. Not because the materialist, educated scientists approved of it, but because the accountants approved of it.
It seems like it reminds me a sort of distance between establishment,
Yes.
maybe as some way in the Vatican is
Yes.
far away
Exactly.
from the people,
Exactly.
and they don't want to recognize something is going on.
Exactly.
And the times are ready.
Exactly. Absolutely. Perfect parallel. And to put it differently, academia is just as corrupt as religion today, and just as out of date. Which, again, if you look at the 12th century Renaissance, the same thing was going on. The feudal system owned education and religion. You see, the monasteries were operating both. And the whole thing had to die because you couldn't just piecemeal get around it. And so there was that Renaissance. The university was invented to displace the monastic educational system. And the new orders, Dominican Franciscan, were born to try to replace the institutional religious dry rot. So today, it is very parallel. This is how things get changed.
Matthew, let me see if you can help me to answer to a question I have since long. I observed in our culture, you mentioned the materialistic science, the reductionism. As Sheldrake says in his last book, everything became one dimension, material stuff. But at the same time, what I'm observing, and in therapy as well, my wife is therapy, and I'm talking also many years ago with psychologists and doctors, that, and you say, we need more body in our ritual. So it's for me, from my point of view, there's a sort of paradox in our society where we believe just in one dimension, the material one, but at the same time we are detached from our body so much that we don't know anything about our body, and when we want to get healed, we just give our body to the doctor, and we don't want to know anything about that. There's no connection. We think there's no connection between our life, emotion, and ancestral, and what's happening in our bodies. What do you think? Why this intellectual celibacy? I would expect that in our materialistic society, the body cult would help us to connect with our body. Why not?
Well, very interesting question, and I think it has many aspects. One is regarding the body cult, if you will. That feeds inferiority complex, which also is fed by the concept of original sin. In other words, most of us are inadequate, but these stars, these perfect bodies that we call number 10, whether male or female, that's the body cult. You have to be like that. Well, 99% of us are not like that. So that just makes you feel smaller, and more inadequate. So that's what hagiography does, and I think that star making is a secular version of hagiography. It's putting people on pedestals so that, and none of us measure up, and so it keeps you even more ignorant and full of shame for your body, because it's not like a movie star's body, for example, or an athlete's body. But also, of course, you're dealing with the ancient dualism from Plato through Augustine into the church, which tells us that Augustine said, and I quote, "The soul makes war with the body." You see, so there's this fierce war, battle between soul and body, spirit and matter. Now, Aquinas broke with that. That's why they condemned him 3 times. It was the issue of what he called consubstantiality of body and soul, because he chose Aristotle over Plato. And Aquinas says, and remember, Aquinas wrote 10 books on Aristotle, not a single book on Plato, not a single book on Augustine. And he tells us why. He says, I prefer Aristotle to Plato because Aristotle does not denigrate matter. Plato does. He says, this body is nothing but a cage, our soul is stuck until you die, and then you're going to fly away. And of course, Augustine picked up on that and said, yeah, and that means heaven. Life is really about heaven. It's not about your body here. Now, the third thing, and this I'm ecstatic about, today's science. David Bloom, the physicist, says, matter is frozen light. Now, some physicists would say it's very slow-moving light. Either way, I'll go with frozen light. Why is that so exciting to me? I think it destroys, it ends Western dualism, beginning with the Plato right up through Ratzinger. Why? Because in my study on world spirituality, as I call it, one river, many wells, wisdom springing from global faith traditions, I found